The Wolf Prince and the Toymaker's Boy. Written, illustrated, and read by me, Jon Wesley Huff. Long ago, in a land gripped by snow, there was a town that history forgot. Although the town was not sprawling, it was the largest of the lot, at least within the region. Its frosted windows flickered orange in the long night, and they set out offerings to the wild things that roamed the woods. The shops welcomed travelers and locals alike, lured by their finely displayed wares and goods. In this town there was a toymaker, old and kindly with deft, nimble hands. He sawed and sanded and painted and hammered all sorts of marvels into existence. Queens, princes, knights, and monsters all glittered and shined on his well-kept shelves. His young boy, Garrett, loved them all, but the toymaker reminded him sadly they could not keep any for themselves. Many were given as gifts to the poor, although the toymaker could count himself among them. And then there were the men who knocked on the door with angry eyes like black, beady gems, there for their cut and there for their due, although as to what they actually did, Garrett had no clue at all. One day the toymaker's boy, bundled up in knitted cap and scarf and gloves, walked to the edge of the wood. He set out on a small pine stump 2 loaves of bread, some salt, and a thimble of mead. He turned to go, but a shadow flicked behind him. He knew he should run, but he found he couldn't just then, so he turned slowly and wondered if death might be near. Instead, there was a boy, his age, with snowy skin and a face bereft of fear that looked at him questioningly with brilliant blue eyes. "It's good," he said, as he shoveled the bread and salt into his mouth. Garrett wanted to protest, to shoo the boy away, and shout, "These are for the wild things that darken the wood." But one better look, and the toymaker's boy understood, for it was plain to see this boy was no boy such as he. He wore no clothes to keep out the cold, except a fine cloak of white wolf fur and a loincloth of the same. Yet he looked so sure, so at home in the dying light of the day, and he winked at Garrett's confused stare. "Stay," said the wolf boy, as Garrett turned to go. "I can't. Some of us freeze when we linger in the snow and in the bitter cold. Some of us are not so bold and wild and free. Surely you can tell that by looking at me." "I'm the Wolf Prince," said the boy, "and it's not wise to tell me no." He gripped the boy's hand with his pale one, and spoke words into his ear, chilled and slow. "Stay just 1 hour in the night wood. Do not fear the cold or the dark while I am near." "I am called Garrett," the toymaker's boy said, for he was a shy boy who worked too much and did not easily make friends. And though clearly wild and no human to be sure, he thought the Wolf Prince might be a good friend for just such a boy. "My father's probably sleeping in our tiny room above the shop, so an hour or more won't matter to my pop, but what would you show me in these snow-covered trees?" The Wolf Prince smiled and upwhirled a breeze that danced his wolf-pelt cloak about the air as he fell to his knee. "I shall be your humble guide, young Garrett, to the world you can't see, and I'll prove to you that you can be as wild and bold and free. 1 little hour is all that I ask you give me." Garrett smiled and nodded, and then they were running, faster than rabbits and most feathered things. The Wolf Prince took him to moonlit pools frozen in time, ice-covered reeds that tinkled like chimes, past fairies that sang winter songs from hovels of clay, through caverns of crystals that glowed like the day. True to his word, the toymaker's boy knew no cold nor bitter chill, but the hour was late, and the stars glittered, as icy white as the Wolf Prince's skin in the sky. "I must go home, I'm afraid," Garrett said with sadness, though he could not say why. But the Wolf Prince smiled crookedly and nodded his head. "I'll take you safely, then, to the wood's edge." And so he did, and the Toymaker's boy saw his town glitter underneath the snow, only broken by one dark plume that rose from below. "Have I been gone so long, or have they started the bonfire early?" But the Wolf Prince was gone without a word. This made the Toymaker's boy feel hurt and a bit surly to feel so quickly abandoned and unheard. He was not far from the town when he heard the frantic cries and saw the men with buckets and smoke-stung eyes. He followed them frantic, although he knew what he'd see. The toy shop was a dark husk, splintered and smoldering. "Who could have done this?" a woman cried, hugging her little girl close. "That poor old Toymaker and his little son, lost." Garrett's tears froze as they filled his eyes. He backed away from the crowd and the hurt and realized that the men, with their dark, beady gem eyes, watched the wreckage with knowing. He ran from the town to the edge of the wood, his lungs filled with ice until his limbs were no good, and he fell into a bank of snow piled by a great pine. He looked up at the stars through the black tree branches until all was black, and he took his chances in the cold embrace of sleep. He woke in the light of the crystal cave. The Wolf Prince wrapped around him and his cloak like a salve, a gentle balm against the cold. The Toymaker's boy did not feel warm, but did not feel chilled, and shot up with a start in confusion. "My brother," the Wolf Prince said, "it's good to see you alive." Garrett was about to speak when he looked at his hands, as white as his friend's cloak's hide. "I know it seems cruel, perhaps beyond your ken. We wild things can't meddle in the world of men. But I'd seen you walk to these woods so many years, your cheeks reddened and eyes set against your fears, that I saved me from a fiery fate," said the son of no one, at last fully awake. The Wolf Prince smiled, pleased not to have to say more, and handed the boy a dark black wolf fur cloak. Garrett took it and was surprised to find that it was no dead thing to be in, but was in fact his own long-lost skin. He and the prince growled in delight as they flexed backward on their haunches and propelled themselves into the night, through snow-draped branches and white patches of moonlight. The end.